Welcome to the First Class Agers, the podcast for curious, fun-loving agers. I'm Marlene Nix, and with me is Ido Loper. And today we're very busy climbing the ladder of emotions, trying to understand what this is all about. From age 50 on, what are we experiencing? What are we feeling? I'd like to link this up with everybody talks about and uses emojis. Do we really know what we're doing? And what do we feel? For instance, the emoji originated in Japan, which is so different in its culture from the Israeli culture. We're warm and we express our emotions to the very extreme at many times, while the Japanese are more restrained. What happens if you say to yourself, how did I feel when I was 50, 60, 70? I know how I feel right now in my 80s concerning my emotions. I ask you, Ido, could you focus in on the feelings? Are they less intense? Maybe they're less intense than mine, or maybe mine are less intense than yours. I'll give you an example. For instance, how do you handle frustration for any reason when you're feeling it? Do you get angry? What do you do about it? And then I'll share with you myself as an example as an older person. And believe me, I have many frustrations too. They don't get less, they aren't less as we age. In fact, I think there are many, many more. So let's start with that. Let's compare. You being the young person, you climb ahead, and then I'll follow you.
I will start with, I think I have a good, in my meditation studies, there is a story about, it's a story, a true story. The Maharishi, one of the heads of he already passed away, he was asked about angry people. And he asked, what happens when angry people are becoming enlightened? So he answered, so they are angry, enlightened people.
Smart.
You can be many, many forms, but if you're intended or if you're inclined to be more angry, you'll be more angry. And it's on your scale, you'll get more angry than other people. It doesn't mean when you are enlightened, it means that you are more aware of it. So you can do some other stuff, but you will be an angry, enlightened person.
You say aware. I think this is one of the words that is very, very prevalent with the older people. Why? Because you become aware of more and more changes. They're external and they're also personal. It might be, and we've talked about this, you're becoming weaker, you're slowing down. There are always the physical signs. For instance, you see less clearly than before. Maybe the hearing is less sharp than it was before. And this affects your activities. Your walking may become slower, may become imbalanced more. So that when you start feeling these changes and you're reacting, you're saying to yourself, is this enlightenment or is this frustration? And if it's frustration, how am I reacting to it? Everything is changing, whether it starts from the outside and goes into the inside. What's happening with me? How am I handling this? Do I feel I'm old? What does this mean to me? Or do I say to myself, this is a change. What am I doing with it? I'm trying or I'm giving up. And it can be in anything. What happens again, when you're younger, do you look for a way to try either something new or to correct what's happening with what you already know?
I think that with age, if we try to, and if we are, I would say, if we judge ourselves, or if we see in a critical, if we criticize the way we behave, and I think everybody criticizes the way he or she behaves, and then you want to have some control of it in order for the minimum, the bare minimum is not to be upset about yourself. Not to mention that if you can control your emotions or control your reactions, it provides you a lot of leverage over social occurrences. And all over my life, I'm trying to control my emotions or my reactions to my emotions. And when I was a younger child or even a teenager, it was very hard for me to control my anger. And I used to fight a lot. It means when somebody would try to bully me, I would go with it till a certain point, and then I would charge him with all my might, and I would take anything around to hit the other guy. And so people started to be afraid of me because they knew that I'm a crazy person.
Don't touch me. I know how to give it back to you.
It's not that I could not control it. I would get so rage. I would pick up anything. It could be a rock. It could be one time I remember it was a screwdriver, and run after the other guy just to destroy. And I was very frightened of this lack of control. And all of my life, I think this is one of the main reasons that I've picked up martial arts, because I wanted to control my aggressions and to control the violence that I can inflict, or the violent situations that I can enter. And then with time, I picked more and more tools in order to control my rage and anger and violence. And so it's something, what I wanted to say is that climbing the ladder of emotions, it's a constant thing, because you feel unhappy or unsatisfied with your behavior, that is being controlled by your emotions. So in order to improve yourself, you have to control your emotions. And with time, you pick up more and more tools to control your emotions. Sometimes it is helpful and sometimes it is not. And it's a constant change, and it is a constant path that you are walking, whether you want it or not.
You know, you're talking about reactions. I look at the reactions that I was familiar with when I worked with the elderly in assisted living. These old men, when they started to fight with one another, and I'm talking about physically as well, had a lot of strength. Suddenly, they were young muscle men in their identity. They felt, okay, he said this, I said that, I want this, I want that. And it was very hard to separate or restrain them. And once I asked one of them, when he was fighting with another one, where did you get all that energy? He said, boy, did I let him have it. I felt young, but he said, now I'm exhausted. I can't move. And this is what happens in different reactions in older age. And I see it in myself. It depends on how you see yourself. Do you feel old, or internally, do you feel I still can do the basics that I did, and maybe I should be working harder on what's frustrating me, what's making me angry. And then at the other side of this continuum is the problem of being sad, where you just give up. And this happens to people who are overcome when they are either lonely or isolated because they have no social contacts, or depressed because of all the changes that they're experiencing physically. Then they just may give up and say, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm an old man. Or the woman who says, if she has been used to being active and suddenly finds herself in a situation where she doesn't understand, as you said at the beginning, the world around her has changed with all the digital technology. And if she gives up, she closes herself into the situation in the corner of this ladder. Instead of climbing up, she's going down, she's climbing down. So if we're talking about emotions and you try to imagine, is this affecting me, whether it's rage, whether it's a feeling of fear or a feeling of loneliness that makes me feel empty, or even the people who are so anxious about losing, whether it's losing a partner, losing friends, losing their relevancy. Who am I, an older person? I feel certain feelings that leave me empty. I don't know how to fill them in. What's the next step up to handle it? And as you age, one sees that certain times as we say in a nice way, the men mellow. So they don't get as physically active as they were before, or maybe they are now able to understand their own feelings and feel not less intensely, but feel sad, feel anger and frustration, and take a breath and say to themselves, I can't handle it, or I can handle it. Why is it that men cry more easily when they're older? Or they have a lump in their throat if they're listening to music, or they see a beautiful scene of themselves with either a grandchild or with a partner, and they feel, as I say, they mellow, they feel very emotional about it. Maybe when they were younger, they were so busy with their lives that they didn't allow themselves, but at an older age, well, you're an old man now. There's more of is there in society a feeling of tolerance? Look, he's an old man, leave him alone, don't bother him. Or look at this man, look at the way he's having difficulty. How's he handling it? Or the children, the family, how do they see the parent emotionally? Do they get angry because the parent isn't the way he was when he was 60? In terms of functioning, how did he function? He was the one who took the child's hand. Maybe now the son takes the parent's hand and helps him. What do you think about that? It's a complete switch emotionally.
I think that our barriers and our guards are being shifted with time, according to what we need in this new stage of life. When you are a young person and you need to conquer I'd say your surroundings, you need to be more influential, you need to be stronger, you need to show everybody that you are strong and successful in order to thrive. So there is a feeling that you need You are not allowed to show any fragility. You cannot allow to show too much emotions. You need to be strong and tough.
It's a picture that says, don't show that you're weaker, be strong. And if you can see two figures, I'm imagining two figures, the one who has the muscles and the strength, and he's young and full of energy. He's young in spirit, young in body. And on the other side, if you look at the older man, how old he is he weaker? Maybe physically. Is he more sensitive to his feelings? He's lived through life. He's had experiences. Doesn't have to fight to thrive. He has to succeed in surviving, trying to be healthy with all the problems that he may meet if they're physical, emotional, or social. So when you're younger, and you talked about now about shifting position, can you give examples of people you know or what you see in your family of yourself and the shifting feelings that you have about being at a certain age, whether it's 50, 60, looking at parents or relatives who are older?
Of course, for me, the biggest influence is my father. When I was younger, I think the first time I started to feel connected to my father was in my 20s, because beforehand, he was busy in providing the family and running after his tail from one hospital to the other, and from one clinic to the other, from the private clinic to the, or from the government clinic to his private clinic. And he had his practice to do. And during the weekends, he had to read all these papers and he had to do all this stuff. And so he didn't really have much time to deal with us. And and with time, and also when I got older and I knew how to get more attention and to come and ask better questions. So when I asked better questions, he had more time to give me better answers that required more time to be answered.
You were growing up and you were changing and you were going through your path in life. And what about him? What happened to him? He had grown up. He was continuing his path and he was changing. So both of you were feeling something.
Yes, and I think that in his path, in my 20s, which is more or less his 40s or even his 50s, he was already calmer because he had his practice. He didn't need to work as hard to provide to the family, and everything was calmer for him, so he could relax a little bit.
You were doing your thing. He had done his thing and took time to breathe. That's
True.
The difference. And you know, when we talk about feelings, there's so many negative feelings and there's so many positive feelings. So on this ladder, when you're climbing, who takes time to bridge the difference, this gap between having empathy with the older person, or is it apathy at the beginning? Oh, he's an old man, I don't want to have anything to do with him. Or she's an old lady, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or who do I see in front of me? Somebody with experience in life, somebody who knows about some of the things that I'm going through or doesn't know. And do I want to take time to listen to them? This is where we talked about patience. When an older person doesn't have patience with himself, because suddenly his abilities and his functions are lessening or slowing down. whereas the fast-moving 40-year-old, the 50-year-old, the 60-year-old with the changes that are going on is still in the race.
I identify a few things that we're talking about. We're talking about climbing the ladder of emotions, that it's something that is in constant evolvement. It's not something linear, and it's not something constant. And every step that we take on this ladder, it's also brings us to another path or another ladder that we're, from each step that we're taking, we can switch ladders or of emotions, and we switch the directions that we are climbing in. And we can meet ourselves in every step of this ladder, and we'll find a different person. We'll find a different person with different reactions and different thoughts and different targets and different memories from the same. Of course, our memories are being changed with time. We think about them differently with time, which means that our whole personality is being changed, or constantly. We change our personality all the time. What interests me is how we can control it. And also when we control it, is which way do we direct our emotional change in order to benefit with our lives. It means that if you are a businessman and a salesperson, so you need to be very aggressive or very something that you go to fight every day. So your ladder of emotion would be much more tense, and you have to cultivate your aggression and the way you hide your aggression, because with your aggression you'll get better success. And so depending on the path that you are choosing, you're also choosing your emotional ladder that will help you to conquer your targets.
There's a difference between, again, the ages, because you see these, in quotes, successful, exceptional super agers. They just keep going, okay? We're talking about energy, physical energy, but the super agers also have their changes in their emotions. Perhaps they have, maybe on this ladder, they've set it up higher, but their intensity, maybe, I wonder if they've studied this. What is the different range now? For instance, if it's been in sports, sure, they slow down, but what are they feeling? They now become, instead of the active person, they become more passive in that sense. So they have time to see it from another angle. That's in sports.
Can you please define the successful super agers that you're talking about?
The super agers, let's think together. Who do we value, in quotes, as a super ager? What makes him super? Physically, he's active. Mentally, he's curious. The super agers like to be challenged by life, I think. They don't give up. They see the positive side of continuing. And I think the mood changes of the people who aren't super agers may affect how they react to the challenges, because they may have excuses. The super ager doesn't think of the excuses. He just goes ahead in many different ways. If you look at the positive side, there's a lot more to do. If you look at the negative side, well, I've done it. I'm done with it. I give up. And then you have what's called disease, which means not being at ease with yourself. That's the big difference. The superager feels good about himself and is at ease, which means he can relax, he can be active. Whereas the person who's old in spirit and old in body and old in mind, he doesn't relax, he just gives up. And where are the challenges for people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s? Who do they identify with? Who do they choose to identify with emotionally?
When you're talking, what comes to my mind is a trainee of mine who is a very successful businessman. He did great in his time. And he had a stroke.
Oh.
Most of the session that I'm having with him, I'm talking about his successes. I'm talking about what brings him pleasure and how can he take it to the next stage. And what I'm trying to formulate is give him a sense of his next mission.
Another step up the ladder.
Another step up there. Yeah, thank you. Another step up the ladder. I'm trying to find the next step for him, or I'm trying for him to figure out what is his next step. That there's always the next step, not to give up and say there is nothing more for me in life because I'm not as active as I used to be. But I keep telling him, you can do everything that you decide you can do, maybe a bit slower, maybe it will take longer, but you can do it. We can find a way that you can do it. And this is the main thing for me, to have him understand and accept, and then we can go on further. And then he will have a greater sense of learning how not to fall and how to fall better. Because if he doesn't have the target, so what's the use of learning not to fall? What's the use of learning to fall safely? Because he will fall, eventually he will fall. So what makes the difference? So at the first stage is giving him the sense that he is capable. He can do whatever you want. And now he needs to decide what is the next stage. I think our conversation really made my path clearer of what I'm doing with him, and it allowed me to speak it clearly for myself so I can deliver it for him better. So thank you very much for this.
We discovered something. There's always new discoveries, and it doesn't matter how old you are or what stage you are on this ladder. Just look to the top. Don't look down. You're not going to fall off if you keep going. It's true. It literally lifts you up and makes you move higher up. Keep going. Right.
Okay. I think we've done enough for one episode. It's a lot of stuff to go over.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
And
a lot to feel good about. So somebody says, how do you feel at 50? How do you feel at 60? You also say, how do you feel at 80 and 90? Because just be aware and climb that ladder. Keep going up. It's been nice talking. I'm looking forward to our next session. And we hope you enjoyed this. And I leave it up to Ido to close this session.
Okay, thank you very much for listening to us for the First Class Agers, the podcast for the curious, fun-loving agers. Today we talked about climbing the ladder of emotions. If you liked it, please share with your friends, their dear ones that would appreciate this episode. Please subscribe so you'll get the new episode as quickly as we post it, and give us some up, and comments would be lovely. We'll highly appreciate it. So thank you very much again, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye for
Bye.
now. Bye-bye.